This is Goodwood, one of the world's fastest and most exciting motor racing circuits. And this is the Radical SR3, one of the world's fastest and most exciting track day cars. And sitting behind the wheel is Andy Green, the world land speed record holder and the man who next year in Bloodhound SSC plans to drive at 1,000 miles an hour. What happens next? You're about to find out. So Andy, first time at the Goodwood circuit in the Radical, how did you find it?
Absolutely fantastic circuit. I've heard so much about Goodwood, first time here, in a fairly challenging car to drive, so I had to focus on learning this high-speed flowing circuit, which I've heard described so many times. Very lucky, John the chief instructor took me around, showed me how to do that, and I've loved every single lap since the first one. It's a fantastic place to race.
Andy, how does the thrill of driving a Radical on the edge in a race compare with breaking the sound barrier in Thrust SSC or executing a high G turn in a Tornado?
Well, I'm fantastically lucky that I've got what I think is the best day job in the world as a fighter pilot in the Royal Air Force. It's tremendously exciting, tremendously satisfying. Add to that, I had the world's best holiday job, working with a remarkable team of engineers on the world's first supersonic car, Thrust SSC, and now the world's first 1,000-mile-an-hour car, Bloodhound SSC. For me, both as a scientist and as a pilot, absolutely unparalleled. That's a fantastic job. To prepare to use my flying skills in a car at very high speed, there is also some driving, and that's the bit of my CV that I need to bolster. So I'm lucky enough also to be able to come to somewhere like Goodwood with a Radical and start to explore how the handling of a race car changes from very slow to very fast, with the aero, with the varying grip in different conditions, different corners, different power settings.
So let's talk about going in a straight line now. Some people are going to think it's all about getting your toe down and keeping it straightforward, you might say. What's the actual reality of Bloodhound?
Well, the thing about any race car, whether it's on a racetrack or in a straight line, is the faster you go, the less lateral grip you get from the tyres. So the car then starts to slide around more and more. Add to that the challenge of going supersonic, doesn't happen here at Goodwood, and you get shockwaves around the wheels starting to break the ground up in front of the wheels. So you're now getting a semi-fluid surface to run on. So it's literally like driving at very, very high speed on a very, very wet surface. Now, that's countered to a certain extent. As the grip comes down, you get the aerodynamic grip coming up. 300–400 miles an hour is about where it's likely to be. That's also where we fire the rocket. The car's under max acceleration, the car is at its least stable, and I'm going to be probably working hardest at the steering at that stage.
Once you've achieved 1,000 miles an hour, do you think that'll be a line in the sand for the land speed record?
It's very hard to know where the land speed record is going right now. During the 1960s there was a fantastic array of jet cars, and the record went up from under 400 to over 600 in the space of just over 2 years. The Thrust SSC took it supersonic, and a lot of people looked at that and said, that's such an impressive achievement, it'll never happen again. Well, guess what? Here we are, 4 or 5 teams around the world, Bloodhound really being one of them, all trying to break that Thrust SSC record, and a couple talking about trying to get to 1,000 miles an hour, just like Bloodhound is.
The rival teams, are you further down the road than them? Will you get there first?
Every single team is different in the land speed record race right now. The guys who are furthest ahead, they've got a finished car and they're testing it, have the least sophisticated car, which will probably be the slowest car. We have another couple of teams out there that may be ready to run next year, so we may actually have some live competition at the same time. And then 2 or 3 years further down the road is a New Zealand team who are aiming to come up from behind, and whatever speed we leave the record at, that'll be their target.
Okay.
Bloodhound will be a test and development program which will start in 2013 with UK runway tests. We'll then go out to South Africa and push the speed up to somewhere north of 800 miles an hour. Now, by the time we get there, several things will happen. We will have a list of engineering improvements to make the car better to get to 1,000 miles an hour. We will also be getting towards the end of the dry season and the start of the rainy season in South Africa. So somewhere at that point, one of those things will probably force us to say, okay, it started raining, or we've now got to over 800 miles an hour, we know what we need to change to get this car, to improve the car, to make it safer, more stable, faster, to get it to 1,000 miles an hour. At that point, we'll stop at the end of 2013, do some more engineering, let the track recover in the rains, and then go back in 2014 with the aim of getting up all the way to 1,000 miles an hour.
What will be the biggest physical challenge? The acceleration, deceleration, or the noise and vibration?
Physically, there are an awful lot of challenges in driving the car. It's going to be a small, cramped, noisy, hot cockpit. Those things I'm reasonably comfortable about being able to deal with. The acceleration, accelerating feet first, so it's like negative G in an aeroplane, a lot of blood flow from my feet to my head, will be uncomfortable. Reversing that and suddenly going to 3G of deceleration as we start to slow down is the bit where my body will physically have to work hardest to resist the what's known as the push-pull effect,
yes.
Negative followed by positive G. And you also get something called the somatogravic illusion, which confuses your inner ear and your body into thinking that initially you're being lying on your back because you're being pinned back, and then suddenly you're thrown onto your front, and the whole world feels like it's tilted by 180 degrees. And it's a very powerful illusion. I'm used to that as a jet fighter pilot. That is something else I will have to overcome at the point where the car's slowing down, because I'm still controlling it and looking for the braking points. Of all of those things, probably the hardest will be just coping with the change of the G into the deceleration. But hopefully, by the time I've finished or carried on with the training I'm doing right now, that'll be a background task while I focus on controlling the car.
Finally, Andy, what do you think Bloodhound's legacy will be?
The thing, from my point of view, that makes Bloodhound most worth doing is its legacy, and that education program around Bloodhound, which so far we've got 5,200 schools signed up. We have 500 volunteer ambassadors trained up to go and deliver and explain the sheer thrill and excitement of Bloodhound science and technology at 1,000 miles an hour, and they are doing that right now today in schools across the UK, and of course through the internet. Schools all over the world are now looking at this technology. We are already reaching out to the next generation of young people and exciting them about science and engineering.